I set the leather portfolio on the table, smiling, ready to tell my parents I had been promoted. Frank looked right at me, eyes flat, voice steady. If I could go back, you would never be born. The air left my lungs like glass cracking in winter, and the room shrank until only his words existed. For 28 years, I chased his rare approval, and tonight he shattered the story I lived inside. I stood there, realizing love can sound like a blade. Apple pie steamed between us, sweet and ordinary, unbearably wrong. My hands halted mid-gesture, gifts waiting like unanswered questions. Some truths don't break gently. They detonate and rearrange gravity. My name is Margaret, 28, born and raised, in Cleveland, Ohio, a marketing professional who learned to measure worth by deliverables, deadlines, and outcomes. My father, Frank, an accountant, loved numbers and control. My mother, Linda, loved cookies, gardens, and gentle reassurance. In our two-story colonial, expectations lived under every ceiling beam. Achievement was oxygen and silence the currency. I rented a small Tremont apartment, drove a paid-off Civic, and dated David, a history teacher, who laughed with his eyes and celebrated small victories. For years, I mistook pressure for guidance, distance for discipline, believing excellence would unlock my father's pride someday. Tonight, I stop translating indifference as love and start listening. I want this story to find anyone who knows that ache. Stay with me. Tonight is where everything finally changes. I learned early that love in our house meant performance. Sunday meant church, pot roast, and quiet evaluations over mashed potatoes. Frank balanced the checkbook while I balanced straight A grades. Mom baked cookies, pressed my hair ribbon flat, and softened impact. At 7, I brought home a spelling test scored 95. He circled the missed word with his pen. Next time, perfect. I decided excellence was safer than asking to be loved. Middle school smelled like gym floors and ambition and disinfectant. I signed up for everything because everything felt like oxygen. Frank's praise came as silence measured in seconds, not smiles. He would set down his fork and ask about scholarships. What are the acceptance rates? What is the ranking? What next? Mom would beam, then glance at him, hoping for sunlight. Every compliment carried a clause. Every clause contained a ledger. High school sharpened the pattern until it gleamed and cut. When they gathered at lakes, I gathered color-coded flashcards. If he asked about practice, I offered a schedule. If he asked about goals, I offered a spreadsheet. He nodded, then reminded me excellence is average in college. The message was clear. Affection was a bonus, never guaranteed. Senior year arrived with applications, interviews, and nervous mail carriers. Valedictorian felt inevitable and still somehow insufficient at once. I delivered a speech about effort, community, and gratitude. The auditorium erupted. Cameras flashed. Mothers cried into tissues. Frank clapped exactly 9 times, then adjusted his cufflink. Adequate, he said later. College will be the real test. Ohio State welcomed me with brick paths and brisk wind. I majored in business, minored in communications, and hustled. I learned presentation flow, how to diffuse a meeting. When I called home after midterms, Mom asked about friends. Frank asked about internships, salaries, and networking breakfasts. He wanted outcomes. I wanted him to want me. When I said I made Dean's List, he said naturally. Money threaded through conversations like a reliable warning siren. Frank talked compound interest the way pastors talk salvation. He taught budgets, envelopes, and how debt devours futures. I am grateful for those lessons and still grieving. One spring, I tried on a dress for prom. Mom said you look beautiful. Frank asked about the price. We bought the simpler one, and I pretended relief. After graduation, I moved back near Cleveland and worked relentlessly. My starter apartment had thin walls and reliable morning light. Frank visited once, inspected my lease, and checked window locks. He complimented my fire extinguisher, then suggested better renter's insurance. Every milestone became a risk assessment with no confetti. I told myself discipline is safety. Safety is love. I met David at a coffee shop in Tremont. He graded essays with ink-stained fingers and easy patience. When I downplayed a win, he toasted it anyway. It felt dangerous to relax, like unbuckling on ice. He never tried to fix Frank. He held space. Mom loved him because he asked about her roses. Frank shook his hand, nodded once, and asked about pensions. Work became my sanctuary and my proof of worth. I learned to guide creatives without crushing their spark. I studied messaging that dignified people instead of manipulating them. It was the one place effort translated cleanly to value. Patricia, my boss, said I steadied rooms I walked into. I tucked those words inside like heat packs in winter. Whenever I visited my parents, the script resumed itself. Mom asked if I was sleeping and eating breakfast. Frank asked about quarterly numbers and market positioning. I offered Sunday dinners, movie nights, little getaways together. He said generosity can become dependence if you are careless. We talked about traffic, taxes, and potholes on Maple Street. We did not talk about pride or tenderness or joy. Underneath, I kept rehearsing the scene I wanted. Someday he would look up and something would brighten. Maybe a wordless nod that meant he finally saw me. I collected those wishes and folded them like notes. I promised the next achievement would finally be enough. I did not realize vaults open inward, not outward. I did not know the key was never in me. I reserved a table at Lago, linen bright and calm. I wanted celebration to feel deliberate, not improvised or lucky. I brought a silk scarf for Mom, blue like October skies. I brought a leather portfolio for Frank, stitched, sturdy, practical. Driving over, I rehearsed sentences like bright sales pitches. Lead with the promotion, then the team, then the office. Mention the raise only after dessert, keep the rhythm generous. I practiced smiling without shrinking, practiced being exactly enough. At home, the ritual unfolded with comforting, dangerous predictability. Mom's pot roast perfumed the kitchen like a forgiving hymn. Frank loosened his tie, sleeves rolled, eyes scanning everything quietly. We discussed potholes, taxes, property values, then neighborhood gossip. I held the news like a sparkler, waiting for darkness. When the pie arrived, I set down my fork. I have some news, I said, trying to sound casual. Senior marketing coordinator, leading a team, trusted with major accounts. Mom clapped and squeezed my hand, tears already brightening her voice. Frank nodded once, the accountant evaluating a line item. More responsibility means longer hours. Keep your ego in check. I deflected the sting and shared the office windows downtown. 15,000 increase, I said. The number almost embarrassed me. He repeated the amount like a statistic, not a celebration. Companies expect returns when they pay above market, Margaret. We will see whether those numbers justify this decision. I breathed, pivoted, and offered what I really wanted. Let me take you both to brunch on Sunday. My treat. And maybe a small getaway this winter. Finger Lakes, bed and breakfast, quiet trails, cinnamon coffee mornings. Mom's face lit like candles, grief and joy entwined. Frank stepped to the window, blinds making stripes across him. So that is what this is, he said slowly. Throwing money around and calling it love and gratitude. His tone shifted the temperature, summer clouds covering the sun. Mom said gently, "She is celebrating, Frank. Let her share." Generous, he echoed, and the word fell like a verdict. You get one promotion, and suddenly you are the provider. Our daughter with a plan for our vacations and needs. Dad, I said, I am offering because I want connection. He turned, jaw tight, eyes sharp with something unnameable. Do you even know how close we are to drowning? The room tilted. My excitement slid somewhere unreachable. Mom set down her cup as if it might shatter. Frank exhaled hard, as though truth required fresh oxygen. 6 months ago, the firm downsized. I lost senior clients. Reduced hours, shrinking bonuses, the kind of cuts that linger. Your mother's medication costs more than our monthly groceries. We have kept up appearances, paid minimums, juggled balances. We are down to counting days between prescriptions and paychecks. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, already doing math. Because we do not need your charity, he said flatly. We raised you without help. We will handle ourselves now. I blinked, words scattering, the offer curdling in midair. This was never about charity. It was about togetherness. He opened a desk drawer and pulled a manila folder. Numbers spilled across statements like, stepped on ants, frantic. He placed it between the coffee mugs like a confession. I scanned interest rates that climbed like bad ladders. Minimum payments circled, balances stacked, penalties breeding penalties. I found a familiar label and felt my stomach clutch. Education Fund, Margaret, Section 4, Projected Growth, Custodial Account. The row was crossed out, penciled annotations pressed nearly through. Where is this? I asked, though I already knew. Frank looked at the carpet, then at my steady hands. Gone, he said plainly, the word landing without apology. He continued before I could assemble a response. Medical bills, a roof leak, a transmission, your mother's insulin. We meant to replace it once the firm stabilized again. It never stabilized. We kept waiting for next quarter. I gripped the portfolio I had wrapped for him earlier. The leather suddenly felt heavy, ridiculous, almost theatrical. That money was for my future, I said evenly. You told me for years it was my cushion. Inheritance, he said, and something bitter crept into the syllables. You have a career, an apartment, a dependable car, savings. What do you need an inheritance for, Margaret, truly? It is about trust, I said, not a rainy day. It is about being told the truth before erasing a promise. Mom whispered, we wanted to pay it back, sweetheart, eventually. When his hours returned, or I could add flexible shifts. We kept thinking a corner was right around somewhere. I swallowed, counted backward from 5, then chose clarity. In the past 2 years, I have covered emergencies quietly. Mom's water heater, the tires, the deductible after the hail. Holiday gifts turned into grocery runs and copays. I tallied quickly. The number startled even me. About 12,000, I said, lower than I remembered. Frank said, we never asked. You insisted on helping. I measured the sentence and took its temperature carefully. You accepted, I said, and that acceptance meant relationship. You enjoyed the benefits of my success while resenting it. His face flickered like a television losing its signal. Resenting, he repeated, tasting the word as if unfamiliar. You think I resent you because you are successful. Dad, I think resentment lives in the spaces between adequate and proud, between numbers and names, between meals. It has lived here so long it thinks it belongs. He straightened, shoulders rigid, that familiar boardroom posture returning. Do not mistake caution for jealousy, he said coolly. I learned long ago not to celebrate until books close. Your wins are unstable until results harden into returns. Mom tried again. Frank, please, she is trying to include us. He ignored her, eyes locked on the promotion like evidence. Companies love bright young stars until a quarter goes sideways. I am reminding you not to forget who you are. Who I am, I said, hearing my voice steady. I am the woman you taught to build forecasts. I am the daughter you taught interest and amortization tables. I am the person who learned value the honest way. So believe me when I say this is celebration, not pity. Believe me when I say I wanted you beside me. He laughed, a short sound, more exhale than amusement. You want us beside you because it photographs well. Mom flinched. I felt something in me harden and lift. This is not a photo shoot, I said, keeping cadence slow. My life is bigger than bullet points and LinkedIn, but I cannot make it small enough to comfort you. He considered, eyes narrowing, fear and pride wrestling in silence. Then he delivered a sentence that knocked dust from rafters. Every time you succeed, I am reminded of my failures. Every milestone you name becomes a ledger of what-ifs. The truth rang cold. The room understood before I did. So my work is a mirror you refuse to face. I kept my hands open, palm up, as if catching rain. Dad, I would rather walk beside you than above. I cannot dim to make your reflection more bearable. He looked away, jaw flexing, temples throbbing with old mathematics. The air tasted like pennies. The clock counted too loudly. Mom's breath trembled like a loose window in wind. He began listing the invisible costs of 30 adult years. Missed promotions, canceled trips, early departures from dinners and games. He built a tower of sacrifices like a closing argument. I will not argue with your sacrifices, I said softly. I will argue with your conclusion about what they mean. You chose family, you chose responsibility, you chose honesty once. Somewhere along the ledger, choice began pretending to be fate, and fate started blaming its children for the totals. Frank's eyes flashed, and the accountant gave way to something raw. You are lecturing me about totals with my money. You offer getaways while we juggle minimums and prescriptions. You want to play hero without carrying the weight. I almost laughed at the miscalculation, stunned by its geometry. Carry the weight, I said, enunciating each careful consonant. I have carried it since I was 7, Dad. Perfection is heavier than any ledger you ever managed. The argument swelled, a tide hitting shore, receding, returning. He wanted logic. I had feelings arranged like exhibits. We knocked against the past like furniture in the dark. Mom kept saying please, please, as if that were currency. A siren screamed somewhere far off, fitting and irrelevant. None of us moved to the window to see. We stood inside a life collapsing along planned floor lines, and no one was willing to shout a safe word. Conflict, Part 2. I tried once more to steer us toward daylight. Let me help in ways that are adult and respectful. No grand gestures, just a plan we review together. We call the credit union tomorrow and consolidate balances. I can cover the gap while you rebuild ours. We set a timeline, keep receipts, and talk openly. Not charity, partnership, the kind that dignifies everyone involved. Mom nodded, hope flickering like a match in wind. Frank's mouth thinned. He shook his head decisively. You think money solves deficits of respect and connection. You want us to need you so you can shine. I kept my voice level, ordinary, and unarmed. I want belonging, not a scoreboard. I want closeness. If help feels small, we can design boundaries together. He stared at the folder like it had accused him. Boundaries, he said, like a loophole in a contract. You talk like a manager presenting remediation to a board. You do not want parents. You want compliant dependents. That landed unfair, and I named the unfairness calmly. I want to be family, which begins with truth. Truth before promises break into splinters under silence. He closed the folder as if ending a meeting abruptly. All right, truth, he said, voice dipping into something colder. Your success throws me off balance and makes caution look fear. It makes loyalty look like smallness and surrender, he said. You float through doors that never opened for me. And you expect me to clap while I count debts. Tell me how that is supposed to feel dignified. Compassion and anger cross like contrails behind my ribs. Your fingerprints are on the life you are resenting. Algebra at the table, budgets, follow-up calls after resumes. Claim your share of credit or put down resentment entirely. For a beat, something softened, then stiffened back into armor. Keep the portfolio, he added. I do not deserve celebration. The sentence revealed a loneliness I had not named. Deserving love had been the rubric my whole childhood. I do not want to win. I want a father, not a judge who tallies my deliverables daily. Respect results, you always said. Respect mine now. See the person, not just the ledger and risk. I opened my phone because numbers create rational oxygen. Assuming $4,000 expenses and $3,000 income monthly, there is a $1,000 shortfall, predictable and corrosive. I can cover that 6 months while you reset. Written agreement, clear rules, regular check-ins, adult dignity. He recoiled like the math itself had insulted him. Do not reduce me to a deficit on paper. Then tell me what dignity looks like here, I asked. He looked away, then back, eyes filming and clearing. It looks like me solving problems I created alone. It looks like you succeeding without turning us into project. It looks like consequences landing where they belong, finally. The picture erased me completely, and I felt it. Daughter could be spectator or sponsor, never simply a daughter. Mom squeezed his hand, voice barely above the kettle's hiss. Frank, she whispered, she is our child, not an audit. He did not answer. Pride and fear wrote competing captions. He has always believed provision equals identity, I remembered. When provision wobbles, shame turns windows into merciless mirrors. Understanding him did not save us from what came next. I lifted the portfolio back into my bag carefully. If celebration feels like contempt, I will not force it. But I will not apologize for joy I worked for. I will not sand my edges to soothe fear. Truth, I added, because the word had weight and heat. He lifted his head. The room seemed to narrow. Fine, he said. Truth, unsheathed and unpolished for company. He squared his shoulders and stepped until courage felt necessary. His eyes locked with mine as if signing a document. He drew a long breath, a door sealing somewhere. His mouth formed the first syllable of a devastating sentence, and I knew we were standing at the edge of everything. Frank inhaled, squared himself, and dropped it without blinking. If I could go back, you would never be born. Silence hit the room like sleet striking a windshield. Apple pie steamed. The air smelled sweet and strangely metallic. I let the sentence settle instead of chasing it away. If truth arrived, then we would speak in truth entirely. I slid the gift aside and faced him directly. You believe my life erased the one you wanted. You see my success and feel cornered by your failures. Here is the ledger, since numbers are our old language. $43,000 from my college fund, taken without warning. $12,000 more I covered in quiet, unrequested emergencies. Water heater, tires, co-pays, holidays, groceries you would not discuss. Add the evenings I softened victories so shame would sleep. Add the years I measured joy small enough to fit. He stared, jaw tight, posture tall, pride fighting with panic. Do not keep score with your parents, he snapped reflexively. You kept score first, I said, grading love as adequate. Every milestone earned a caution sticker instead of honest affection. Mom whispered my name. I nodded and kept the floor. Dad, I honor the roof, braces, winter coats, and gas. I honor every overtime hour that thinned the tendons. But I refuse the bill you are sending my spirit. Provision is not permission to withhold warmth forever. I will not keep auditioning for a part called daughter. He looked past me, searching the window for a different ending. You parade promotions while we juggle minimums and prescriptions, he said. You offer vacations to polish a narrative for your friends. No, I said. I offered belonging and a way forward. You mistook invitation for pity because shame distorts every mirror. Then hear me clearly, because your sentence has consequences tonight. If I was never born as you now wish, live accordingly, without my salary, my time, or emotional translation. No more quiet transfers when the furnace fails in January. No more Sunday checks disguised as birthday gifts or generosity. No more budgeting sessions where I bring oxygen and patience. I am closing the account that funds contempt toward my existence. Mom reached for my sleeve. I held her hand gently. This is not revenge, I said. This is alignment. If I truly never existed, your budget never includes me. Practice that version. Call the bank, refinance, sell what hurts. Learn the difference between dignity and dependence the hard way. Frank's eyes flashed, then faltered. Anger could not hide trembling. You would watch us struggle while you drink downtown lattes. I will watch you be adults doing adult obligations. Respect returns, resentment retires, then we design help with boundaries. Until then, I stop underwriting a story that deletes me. He swallowed, throat working like a man learning unfamiliar words. I am trying, he said, softer than I expected. Trying to what? I asked. Impress a past that never listens? Because I am here, not a quarterly report or forecast. I am not a deficit to be carried forward indefinitely. I pointed to the graduation photo on the bookcase shelf. Your arm rigid, smile thin, eyes already calculating the aftermath. I learned that version of love and survived it. I will not shrink again to keep anyone comfortable. His shoulders sagged. The boardroom armor failed to fully fasten. Fear is honest, I said, but it is not governance. Courage is the payment due when truth finally arrives. So here are the terms, simple, written, and enforceable tonight. I keep my joy at full brightness without apology. I keep my money until respect returns to this house. I keep my distance if contempt is the price of proximity. If you want relationship, choose it with actions, not bitterness. If you want fantasy, live it without the Margaret subsidy. He stared at the carpet, then lifted his eyes slowly. I am scared, he admitted, and it landed like weather. I nodded. I cannot be your umbrella against yourself. I can be your daughter only where there is respect. I picked up my keys and tucked the portfolio away. Last item, Dad, I said, clear as a notary stamp. Your wish reshapes our reality starting now, not later. No access to my savings, calendar, or nightly emotional labor. Effective immediately, the Margaret department closes for indefinite audit. The ledger balances, the meeting adjourns, and I walk out. I drove home through streets that suddenly felt misnamed and unfamiliar. Everything looked the same. The meanings had quietly changed places. David arrived with wine and patience, offering presents instead of solutions. Telling the story out loud loosened knots I considered permanent. Therapy followed. The counselor called my habits rescue dressed as love. Boundaries, she said, are invitations to dignity, not cages for affection. I wrote them down, hands shaking, and kept them anyway. The first weeks were brittle but bright around the edges. I canceled heroics, cooked simple meals, and slept without spreadsheets. Mom called, apology hovering. I answered with gentleness and guardrails. We could talk gardens and books. We would not trade ledgers. Caring did not require solving. Love did not require overdrafts. Consequences showed up like unsent invoices finally delivered properly. Frank took extra hours, sold equipment, and canceled the golf membership. Linda shelved paperbacks at the library between doctor appointments. They refinanced the mortgage, reduced subscriptions, and learned envelopes again. Hard does not equal cruel. It equals honest with a clock. One morning, Mom slid me a shoebox across cafe laminate. Inside lay old ledgers and a letter from Frank's father. Harold praised thrift, warned against tenderness, distrusted feelings as liabilities. Children, he wrote, are price tags on potential, not miraculous arrivals. The words did not excuse Frank, but they mapped the terrain. Boys raised on scarcity learn to grade affection like inventory. I closed the box with compassion that refused to surrender boundaries. Months later, Frank called, voice bare, asking to meet for coffee. He looked older, less polished, and strangely lighter around the eyes. I was wrong, he said. Not about math, about story. Resentment was armor I inherited and polished until it blinded. Your success scraped it. I mistook scraping for attack and shame. I listened without rescuing. Listening itself felt like a new language. I want a relationship without ledgers, he said, simply and specifically. No money, no negotiations, just time, respect, and learning you. We set rules like reflectors on a dark residential street. Monthly coffee, 1 hour, no budgets, no career comparisons. If respect breaks, we pause. If blaming starts, we stop. He returned to counseling. I did not applaud, just acknowledged. Our first coffees were mostly weather, photos, and awkward intervals. He asked about David and did not calculate the pension. He told me he walks at dawn when panic mutters. I brought nothing to fix, only presence, patience, and a timer. Silence arrived. We watered it carefully, and it softened us. Linda bloomed when no one required her to be glue. She sent pictures from the returns desk, smiling behind paper towers. We met for muffins, hugged, and left before problem solving. It felt new to love her without triage and instructions. A small envelope arrived addressed in Frank's careful printing. $200 from selling the vintage mower with a note, not repayment, a gesture, keep it, no strings, I'm learning. I donated it to a scholarship and slept without confusion. Giving without entanglement felt like sun moving across a kitchen. When David proposed between library stacks, my yes arrived like relief. We told my parents by phone. Silence did not bruise. Frank said, "Congratulations," then asked, "What help feels respectful here?" "Flowers," I said, and presents and no speeches about sacrifice. At the party, he carried chairs, waited for instructions, and listened. Later, he lifted lemonade and spoke 12 simple, necessary words. "I am proud of your joy, not only your discipline, Margaret." The sentence landed steadily. I did not search for asterisk shadows. Wedding planning tested our new choreography in small, ordinary ways. He built easels, stayed out of budgets, and showed up early. Linda chose a dress she loved, not a price that soothed. I practiced asking please without expecting any conversion or miracle. Help came as hands and time, not audits or advice. On the morning of the wedding, he knocked and paused. He handed me a card, not a check, only ink. A photo of me on training wheels, grinning, wobbling forward. On the back he wrote, "Presence is pride. I am here." I cried fast and clear and did not fix the sentence. Afterward, we hosted dinner in our small backyard under string lights. Frank grilled, David told stories, Linda organized plates by pattern. Conversation lost its armor. Nobody graded tenderness with spreadsheets. We let the night be ordinary, generous, and enough. Not every day glowed. Sometimes comparisons slipped through old seams. We noticed, named it, paused, and resumed with smaller words. Respect remained rule one, even when honesty scraped like sandpaper. Distance sometimes helped. Closeness sometimes steadied. Neither was punishment. The unexpected letter arrived before Thanksgiving with an old logo. A retired partner wrote about a crossroads Frank never disclosed. Before Mom's pregnancy, the firm offered a risky relocation track. Frank declined quietly, afraid of volatility, already courting predictability. He buried the decision inside fatherhood and called it sacrifice. The letter released a ghost that did not belong to me. Some regrets predated my birth. I refused them as inheritance. We shared coffee, read aloud, and let the past exhale. I keep my financial boundary clear, generous, and uncompromised. Gifts are specific and small. Assistance travels through organizations. Family love is a practice, not a pipeline or payroll. We measure health by repair speed, not the lack of conflict. We measure love by presence, not the cost of celebration. A year later, I opened a small consultancy near Public Square. Mom arrived with cinnamon rolls. Frank delivered a toolbox and patience. He asked for a tour and listened like a student. By the window, he said quietly, "Keep your joy bright." I answered, "Keep your heart soft, the numbers can wait." Sometimes I study the graduation photo I once avoided. I do not flinch now, I narrate it differently inside. That girl believed approval lived behind a secret door forever. This woman knows the door was a mirror the whole time. Love was never a reward. It is the work within. I kept my family without misplacing myself on any shelf. The audit closed, the books are cleaner, the story continues. Where respect stays minimum, tenderness multiplies, and boundaries protect wonder. Thanks for staying with me to the end. If this story resonated, tell me where you're watching from, and share your own moment of drawing a hard line with family. What did it cost, and what did it give back? I read every comment. If you found value here, please like the video. Subscribe for more true family stories, and share this with someone who needs the reminder, your worth isn't up for debate. See you in the next story.